Mr. Brown leaned forward. "Number 32, Windsor Gardens." The driver cupped his ear with one hand. "Can't hear you," he shouted. Paddington tapped him on the shoulder. "Number 32, Windsor Gardens," he repeated. The taxi driver jumped at the sound of Paddington's voice and narrowly missed hitting a bus. He looked down at his shoulder and glared. "Cream," he said bitterly, "all over my new coat." Judy giggled and Mr. and Mrs. Brown exchanged glances. Mr. Brown peered at the meter. He half expected to see a sign go up saying they had to pay another 50 pence. "I beg your pardon," said Paddington. He bent forward and tried to rub the stain off with his other paw. Several bun crumbs and a smear of jam added themselves mysteriously to the taxi driver's coat. The driver gave Paddington a long, hard look. Paddington raised his hat and the driver slammed the window shut again. "Oh dear," said Mrs. Brown. "We really shall have to give him a bath as soon as we get indoors. It's getting everywhere." Paddington looked thoughtful. It wasn't so much that he didn't like baths. He really didn't mind being covered with jam and cream. It seemed a pity to wash it all off quite so soon. But before he had time to consider the matter, the taxi stopped and the Browns began to climb out. Paddington picked up his suitcase and followed Judy up a flight of white steps to a big green door. "Now you're going to meet Mrs. Bird," said Judy. "She looks after us. She's a bit fierce sometimes and she grumbles a lot, but she doesn't really mean it. I'm sure you'll like her." Paddington felt his knees begin to tremble. He looked round for Mr. and Mrs. Brown, but they appeared to be having some sort of argument with the taxi driver. Behind the door, he could hear footsteps approaching. "I'm sure I shall like her, if you say so," he said, catching sight of his reflection on the brightly polished letterbox. "But will she like me?"